Hey everyone, welcome back to Medical Morons. Today we are speaking with Hannah Pugh, aka Practitioner Pivot, who proves that pivoting within healthcare is totally possible and your degree is just the starting point of a fast career. An occupational therapist by training, Hannah knew early on that the solely clinical life just wasn't for her. But what she was interested in was how she could use her clinical knowledge to have a bigger and broader impact. Her career shift was so profound that she wanted to let others in on the secret that you don't have to stay at a job just because you put in the time and effort already. So many people resonated with her message, and now Practitioner Pivot has 30,000 followers on Instagram, and she does consultations to help people pivot in their healthcare career. I selfishly loved talking to Hannah because I'd be lying if I said I never fantasize about working from home, even if it were part-time. But I also want to be fulfilled and be doing something related to orthodontics because I do love my career. So she really helps open my eyes on the different kind of options and opportunities there really are out there for us. And I left feeling super inspired and honestly excited about what my career could be like.
Yeah, very impressive, very articulate, very thoughtful. I think it's interesting that she's tapped into such a large population of people who obviously are dissatisfied in their initial career choice, looking to pivot, and it sounds like there's a big market for that. Something interestingly that the healthcare industry probably has a challenge on its hands if it's got so many highly educated, success-oriented people who are looking to make a career change and pivot out of it. So,
Right. That's a good
interesting.
point. I think it's obviously a testament to the system, like same. I mean, she mentioned teachers too. Like a lot of teachers are obviously unhappy. I mean, I had a lot of like crabby asshole teachers. And I'm like, why'd you go into this if you are gonna be like this? And I think to her point, it's like people feel like they did this and they have to. They can't just like walk away from it.
It's also interesting from a generational standpoint, and we were with a bunch of friends the last couple of days and talking about this among people who are my peer group. When we got out of college or got out of grad school, there was never any sort of notion of maybe you should change path, maybe you should drop out. I mean, we were all just head down, pedal to the metal, working as hard as we could. And I think people who are in your cohort are looking for more than that, and looking for greater work-life balance, looking for more meaning, and it's just a different mindset, which I think is healthier, but noticeably different than what people who are my age were
Yeah, I
focused
have
on.
trouble doing things that I'm not interested in or passionate about. Like, I do not want to just like do it because I'm told to. That is not going to work for me. I feel very lucky that I actually do really like orthodontics, but I know a lot of people are like, I don't love this job. I just pays the bills. I have a flexible schedule. So it's cool to know that there's other options out there. And then this was something, I mean, I might take this out. I'll see how I feel, but just like something that came to mind, and I feel like it'll come back and resonate. But a silly example is, so I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and the last book, it's called The Deathly Hallows. It's called The Deathly Hallows. So you think that's going to be like the biggest part of the story, and it's kind of not. Like it wasn't like essential to the objective of Harry finding the Horcruxes. I know that means nothing to you. And so I remember talking to someone about this when I read the book, and I was like, why'd they call it Deathly Hallows? Why didn't they call it something about the actual game of finding the Horcruxes? And they were like, it wasn't necessary to the end goal, but it was necessary to his path to get there. Does that make sense? Even though you don't know what I'm talking about?
Yes, it does make sense.
Okay. Because I was like, okay, so when you're applying it to a job, like, okay, I'm an orthodontist. I got to do orthodontics. But just because I committed to that doesn't mean that orthodontics hasn't brought me on this career journey that taught me so much and got me to where I'm going to be. So even if I go into another field, which I'm not going to do, but even if I were to go into another field, what?
No, I'm glad to hear
That's what I
that.
mean. That even if I were to go into another field, though, no matter what, my dental school education, my orthodontic education, it all led me to that destination, meaning it's not a waste. If you pivot, if you change your mind, it's not a waste. It got you to where you needed to be. So that's what that reminded me of.
Good, good. All right, I gotta go.
Okay, bye.
Because I have a guy here who's going to do some.
Okay,
Let
I
me,
had
let
some
me.
things I wanted to talk about, like separate from this at some point, but not
Okay.
urgent.
Okay. Personal or professional?
No, like professional.
I can talk to you while we're driving up to New Jersey.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, give me a call. I'll be
All right.
around. All
All
right,
right,
love
Snap.
ya. Good
Love you
episode.
too. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
I went to Michigan State. I was a student athlete. I was a swimmer. And so that's kind of what led me into kinesiology, because I felt like it was, a good match with like my experience. Eventually, I landed on occupational therapy. I went to grad school at University of Pittsburgh. Then I moved to Chicago after I graduated, and I worked for like about 3.5 years as an occupational therapist.
So, occupational therapy, I feel like unfortunately, a lot of people don't know what is exactly going
Mhm.
on. My understanding, kind of like helping people live their lives however that may be. So, if someone's blind and putting their clothes in an order so that they know what to
Mhm.
get, that's kind of the example I think of. What did you do in that space?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So really it's about, yeah, helping people live their occupations, which are all the things that you need to do, have to do, and want to do in a given day. And so I actually worked in the outpatient setting, which was kind of wide variety of patients that I would get. Because it was mostly Medicaid population, but a lot of it was people who had had hand injuries, had chronic conditions like arthritis, joint pain, different things like that. And so it would be like teaching them how to, maybe it's exercise to improve the strength and dexterity in their hands. Maybe it was to compensate to use a specific piece of equipment. And then I also worked with kids with sensory issues, neurodiverse population, kids with developmental delay. And then in the hospital setting, I was working on the orthopedic acute care floor. And so it's really people after like hip and knee surgery a lot of the time. And so that's like you seeing them the day of their surgery, the day after their surgery, really trying to like educate them on if they're going to go home, what do they need to be able to go home? Are they going to be able to like put their pants on themselves, or are they going to need a caregiver, or are they going to have to learn a different way to do it? So teaching people how they're going to be able to do those things with this new surgery that they just had.
My dad unfortunately is very familiar with that process. Dad, could
I've
you
had
could you
both
put your
tips.
pants on?
I don't think that that's a podcast worthy question. I don't think that's fair. I was
Poor mom.
dressed.
Poor
I
mom
was
is all I gotta say.
dressed. I was dressed
Okay.
properly. Can
Awesome.
I ask about your experience as a college athlete? When I was at a law firm, I would say we really liked college athletes as candidates. Obviously, that wasn't the only credential that we looked at, but the sort of competitiveness and focus, discipline, all the qualities that are part of being a successful athlete translated well to the practice of law. I think that the Wall Street investment banks and private equity funds also value the experience of college athletics. Can you talk a little bit about that background? What event did you swim in, or events did you swim in,
Yeah.
and how has that contributed to success in your life?
Yeah, so I grew up swimming. I knew I wanted to swim in college, landed on Michigan State, swam there, and it's very rigorous, the training and the balance of what you have to balance between two-a-day practices. And then in addition to that, balancing courses, classes, all of that stuff. And so I think for me, it really helped kind of give me that solid foundation of like, you're able to balance whatever comes your way, and you're able to like manage those priorities of, okay, you have to be at practice at 6 a.m., you have to be at practice again at 4 p.m. And so in between those hours, when you're doing your schoolwork, you have to do it because you have that time frame that you have to get it done. And, you have to get to bed early because you have to be up early for practice. And so, yeah, I think at the time I didn't realize how foundational it was, but really I see it bleed into my life. Like I think it still kind of, yeah, infiltrates into my day to day, and how I think about success.
What event did you swim in?
Yeah, I swam mostly like 400 IM, which is long.
Oh my
Yeah, and
God.
yeah, 200
Holy shit.
butterfly and 500 free were like my main three, but I kind of did dabbled in a lot of different things.
So I mean, that even for swimming, those are long distance swims
Yeah.
that you have to spend a lot of time in the pool, obviously, to get that kind of conditioning and training. So, I mean, I think that's fascinating. And anything you can tell us about how you've kind of applied those experiences in your career, I think would be interesting to hear about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even going from working clinically as an OT to working non-clinically and working at startups, that was a really big hurdle that I think a lot of people mentally didn't want to go through. And for me, mentally, at first, it was like, okay, I just went to grad school. I just spent all this time. I've only been working in the field like 3.5 years, and I want to do something a little bit different with my degree. And I think having that athlete mindset was like, you're never going to know until you try, and you have to kind of keep trying to get to your goal of what you want. And I knew my goal long term wasn't going to be a seasoned clinician of 20 plus years of working in the clinic. And so I think that ability to try things a little out of the box, try things a little unorthodox, or I guess not as normal, quote unquote, being an athlete laid that foundation mentally to be able to go for it and then know that you could always come back. But I feel like that's something as a swimmer, like you're trying to train for the milliseconds, you're training to get, 0.01 better. And it's like such small margins. And so you have to be willing to kind of like try different things in order to get there because, keep doing the same training is, the definition of insanity. So, yeah.
So cool. And what immediately jumped out to me is that people in the healthcare profession typically are type A, want a routine, want to be very like structured and know what to expect. And you have the edge of having that. But in addition, you're also a little bit more risk taking. So that's like the perfect combination to success, is what that sounds like. So really cool. I would die if I had to do 400 meters in the pool. So kudos to you. Okay, so you mentioned that you knew you weren't going to be in practice for 20 plus years or so. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I feel like most practitioners think that that's where their trajectory is going.
Yeah, I just kind of knew, I wouldn't say I knew right away. Like I went to grad school to be a clinician. I thought I was going to be a clinician for forever. But in grad school, we had a few like lectures of people who were using their clinical degrees in like these non-traditional ways, like whether they were starting their own business, whether they were working as a consultant for a company. And I just like really felt my soul light up when I heard those conversations. And I was like, wait, that's really cool. And I love that they use their foundational education to do something a little bit different. I felt like it made a lot more impact and it was a lot more scalable than just treating patients one on one. And I really liked that aspect of it. And so when I started working, or actually I was in my clinical rotations, which is, something you have to do as a student, I just kind of saw the clinicians that had been there for like 25, 30 years. And I like really valued their clinical expertise. Like I thought they were obviously super smart and like incredibly knowledgeable. But when I was thinking of myself, I was like, I just don't want that to be me. Like I just never saw that for myself. And so then when I started practicing, still kind of felt the same way. And it's important to, get those foundational skills to use my degree the way it was initially intended to. But I think for me, it was just long-term career vision. I just couldn't see myself doing that. And I had to kind of figure out what really that looked like for me then, if it wasn't going to be that.
Totally, totally. I think a lot of people can relate. I think a lot of people are, I don't know if stuck's the right word, but I definitely have conversations with
Mm-hmm.
people who feel like I did the damn thing. I've been in school for freaking ever, and no way I'm turning back and not gonna do this. Like that's sickening that you're in debt and you have loans and
Yep.
you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna do something else. So what was the switch? When did you say, okay, I'm gonna pivot according to your handle?
I mean, yeah, that's the sunk cost fallacy of thinking that, we dedicated too much time, effort, energy, money. We owe it to ourselves or owe it to our loans or owe it to our family, whoever supported us, to kind of stick with it for that reason. But I always say you're not closing the door on your clinical degree and saying goodbye, see you never, I'm not using this, and like moving to something else. And it's always your foundation. Your degree is always going to be your foundation. Your degree, those skills, those transferable skills you've learned are always going to be there. And like, heck, you can always go back. And so I think having that can just kind of set that foundation of that mindset a little bit and give you at least some permission to try it. But how I got kind of started is I did a lot of inner work, a lot of like self exploration of like, okay, if I don't want to do this for forever, what do I want? Like, what actually am I interested in? What am I good at? And so I started doing literally what anyone would do and like Googling, what else can I do with my OT degree? And that kind of led to conversations I had with people who were kind of doing things outside of clinic. And I thought that was like really inspiring and really cool to see people who are working at like Google and design or working at startups, working in health tech, and all of that stuff like really inspired me. So how I got my foot in the door is I started actually with user experience design or UX design. I was really interested in that. Like OT does a lot with accessibility. And I felt like if I could learn the digital accessibility piece, that could be like a good way to bridge those clinical skills in this like non-clinical verse. And so I started with that, and then honestly just started networking a ton, just started talking to people. One thing kind of led to another, and I got my foot in the door at a startup that I was actually at for the last like 4.5 years. And so I was doing kind of everything, clinical operations, clinical product work. And yeah, so really it was like a lot of hard work, a lot of inner reflection of like figuring out what I want, and then a lot of networking to see what doors could open and talking to the right people and putting myself out there and be a beginner and accept that I wasn't going to know everything and be willing to continue to have that growth mindset and continue to learn outside of my skills.
So that first job, is this at Reactive?
Yes, that was my first non-clinical job.
So can you tell us a little bit about what Reactive is and what your first role was, specifically like how you applied or if you applied your OT degree, or could someone who didn't have a grad school or like a clinical knowledge, could they have been in that role, or did it kind of require that dual understanding?
Yeah, so it was a really honestly perfect blend of clinical skills and my clinical background. And so what we were doing at Reactive was we built a fully virtual OT clinic that used gamification and AR games. So we treated patients with like joint pain, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, fractures, things like that. And so it was fully virtual. And then, like I said, use the gamification piece to increase engagement and compliance. And so really when I got brought onto the team, we were very early stages. We were kind of in the process of building that product. And so I kind of led the clinical insights. And so I was like, okay, if we're making this virtual, what do we need from like a clinician standpoint of like, how are we actually going to make this legit where we can bill or we can see patients that is HIPAA compliant. We can operate in a way that is similar to the clinic in terms of like what the clinicians need in terms of like data collection and yeah, billing and all of that stuff. And so that's kind of when I got brought on, then operationalized, and it was a fully virtual clinic. So I kind of moved more on to, I did some treating of the patients virtually that we were seeing. I helped with like the marketing for the patients, I helped with the social media. I did a lot of different things in it. I helped with like payer contracts and getting a network with different insurance plans. So I think that my clinical background, like just because we were building the OT clinic, really lent well. So I think, yeah, you would have had to be in it. And so, yeah, I was with the company basically from like inception, a little bit after inception, I guess. So in that building phase, and then all the way through. And then we actually just closed in June, end of June. So like about a month ago, just because of scaling was quite difficult. But yeah, it was really an awesome experience. And I learned so many different things on the business side, on the non-clinical side. And I think that it was really, really great. role that I like really enjoyed.
I did a lot of work with startups, and I always felt like the energy of the environment and the excitement and the fact that people really felt like they were collaborating to build
Mhm.
something gave them a lot of sort of psychic income. Did you have that experience as a result of your work there?
I would say it was a roller coaster. At some points, it was like riding the high, especially when we would get new momentum. And then, sometimes it would kind of taper off. For me, what I enjoyed a lot was my voice mattered a lot since it was, a small company. And, I got to be the voice that actually dictated some of the paths that we went on. But I think on the flip side, too, it's like your voice matters. And so if you do something and it doesn't work out, you have to own that as well, which I mean, that's part of business. That's part of anything really. So there is definitely some highs, there's definitely some lows with it, but all in all, I think it was well worth it.
And did you immediately like it better in that first year? Were you like, oh my God, thank God, made the right decision? And what did you like better about it?
Yeah, so actually, before I was hired on full time, I was hired on as a consultant and I just did like 10 hours a week. It was a way to just kind of test it out, I guess. So I kind of already knew going into it when I eventually moved full time that it was going to be a good fit. But yeah, it was immediately a breath of fresh air, I would say. It was hard for me at first to get used to it. When I moved into this role, it was remote, which was a challenge for me because I, was just so used to being around people and being so scheduled. And so it took a lot of self-discipline to kind of figure that out. But yeah, having flexibility throughout the day and kind of owning your work and doing it when works best for you. It wasn't like a rigid 9 to 5, like you have to be on at this time and off at this time. It was more like, we trust you, get your work done, work, do it. But that was something that was really foreign to me. Like I had never experienced that in a professional setting. So I think at first I definitely liked the work. I liked what I was doing, but there was definitely some learning curves and some challenges of like settling into the new role.
Okay, one more thing about this, and then I want to get into practitioner pivot. What did you do after Reactive? Did you just go into the social media space, or are you still doing occupational therapy work?
No, so actually, I'm starting a new role next week on Monday. Yeah,
Exciting.
so I'm going to be a client success manager at Prompt, which is an EMR company. They kind of integrate into PT, OT, chiropractic clinics. So I'll be having different clients on the clinical side. And so that also was another bit of a pivot. After 4.5 years of working at a startup, I kind of wanted something that was going to be more on the business side and more focused work.
Very cool. Very exciting. Well, good luck. I hope you enjoy
Thank you.
it. Okay, actually, another question about this, and feel free to not answer or, it's no problem, but I'm just curious, what was the financial difference? Are you kind of making the same amount of money, more or less? Like, I think that's a big fear also is that, going into healthcare is good job security and steady income. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I actually made more at the startup and am making more in my next role than I would as a clinician. Actually on my practitioner pivot page, I pulled people who had gone non-clinically and asked about 50-50 of people who took a pay cut and said it was worth it because they got more like PTO, flexibility, work-life balance, all that stuff. People that got a pay raise. And then there is like a small percentage, I think it was about 5% that said they took a pay cut and it wasn't worth it because of some other factors. And
Totally. Okay. So you're doing your thing. You're in the business world of occupational therapy, startup, everything. Where does social media come into this? Were you always good at doing things on social media? Because I'm trying and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. How did that come in? What made you decide to promote what you do on that page?
Yeah, so I did do the social media for Reactive and like I learned just kind of the basics of like what worked, what didn't work, trial and error, a lot of it, honestly. And then so informally, I was doing practitioner pivot stuff. So having conversations with clinicians, I would get approached a lot of people who would say like, hey, I'm also interested in potentially leaving the clinic. How do I do it? And so I was having a lot of one-off conversations with people, attending like networking events and people would ask and I would talk about it. And so about a year ago, it was like July of 2024, I like formalized Practitioner Pivot and made it into an LLC. And like, because I wanted to own what I was saying. And really, I was doing it so frequently that I was like, okay, if I'm going to talk about what I'm doing and how I did it and resources and all of that stuff, I just wanted to like, yeah, come back to me. And so,
And were
yeah.
you already a media presence by this time? Or did you have
Mhm.
followers? It was just like your friends and people in the space.
Yeah, so before I formalized the LLC in July, I think I started posting on social media maybe in like April or May or something. I was just kind of trialing it, seeing what kind of traction I could get, and it grew. It's grown like steadily. At the time, it probably only had like 500 followers or something. I think the big thing for me was just like showing up authentically and not being afraid to talk about like, it kind of sucks. Like honestly, making this decision kind of sucks. And it's not always easy, but it's okay. It's okay if you feel like you don't want to work in the clinic forever. And there's things out there that you can do, and there's ways that you can use your degree that's going to maybe make you more fulfilled, maybe improve your career trajectory. And let's talk about it because I feel like there's a lot of shame with it, and there's a lot of people who feel that sunk cost fallacy of like, yeah, I dedicated all this time, effort, energy, money into this, and like I have to stick it out because I did this to myself, and like I need to like continue down this path. But I don't necessarily think that's the case.
When did you start to realize, Hannah, that you had tapped into something that had a lot of traction with a large number of people? I mean, you have 30,000 followers now. That's a
Yeah.
huge population. Did you kind of think right at the beginning that you were onto something, or were you a little bit surprised about the fact that so many people were kind of echoing what you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's healthcare. Everyone wants to complain about it and wants people to voice the things that they're maybe thinking. And so I think it was just kind of right place at the right time and saying the right things. I don't think I expected it to maybe grow so quickly, but I'm not surprised because I think it speaks to a lot of what people are feeling and what people maybe want to hear. Because really, I built it on my own experience. Like the things that I share and the things that I do are like the things that I would have wanted someone to tell me when I was going through it. And so I don't think there was ever a moment where I was like, oh, this is an untapped market that I'm capitalizing on. I never really thought of it like that. I was just like, wow, there's a lot of people who resonate. And I think that's like, it's good. But also sometimes I'm like, it's kind of crazy that there's a lot of people that resonate because it's not all necessarily great things that I'm sharing.
I think, though, that among many professions where it's labor intensive, the academic training is very rigorous and can take a long time. I think there's a lot of people who made career choices and then, in hindsight, wish they had followed a
Mhm.
different path. I don't think that's uncommon, and I don't think it's unique just to the healthcare space. I think, for
Yeah.
example, law, accounting, I think anywhere that your kind of hours are sort of the currency.
I mean, everyone I know complains about their job. Everyone can relate. Everyone has things that they wish were different. I think that's what's so cool about your platform is that you kind of allow people to recognize that it's in your hands. You're not be following whatever your career tells you to do for the rest of your life, which I think is really cool and a good reminder. I did a poll on my Instagram like a couple of weeks ago saying, would you have gone into healthcare if you had known that that remote work is going to be, such a big part of
Mhm.
everyone's lives? And it was like 65 or 70% said no, which is crazy. And I don't think that's because like they don't want to help people or whatever, but it's a big factor and something to consider. And is that something people reach out to you a lot about? What's part of your strategy with advising people on pivoting? And yeah, like just kind of a little more detail, I guess, about what you do when you talk to people.
Yeah, yeah. So I do one-on-one coaching with people, and I always talk about like the different steps to landing a non-clinical role. And it always starts with first like identifying your values, your needs, and your goals and your strengths, and like doing that inner work. And then it's like, okay, identifying target roles. You need to narrow down what you want to go into, and then identifying target companies. So companies that are going to be hiring for those roles, then networking, Then you can get into like the resume, making a non-clinical resume, applying, interviewing, all of that stuff. And really, a lot of it is that first piece of like, okay, who are you? What kind of lights you up about the clinical work? What do you like? What do you do? And then getting into like, okay, here's potential roles that you could possibly explore, and then the rest of the steps to get there. So I do think it's crazy because I do have people who come to me and they say, I want a remote job. I need a remote job. And I think there's a common misconception that like remote equals flexible. And I think that's not always the case. There's some remote jobs that are remote, but you're kind of like, for lack of better words, tied to your desk or tied to your computer. And people find that to be exhausting as well, like because you're at home, but you can't do anything. And so I think it's about really getting down to like, okay, what is it that you want? Do you want flexibility? Why is that you're seeking a non-clinical role, and like what is it that you like about the clinical world, and what is it that you don't like, and then let's see if we can find something that maybe better meshes for you.
100%. I think that the grass is always greener. Every time I talk to someone about something, it's like, you have this, well, I have this. And like my brother, for example, works remote and he's such a social person. And he's like, I'm talking to myself all day. And I'm like, well, at least you get to wake up like 5 minutes before your meeting. It's like
Yeah.
everyone just wants what they can't have, which is so, so sad and so disappointing. So I think that inner work is clearly super important. Was there anything on your page that gained a lot of traction, like anything that went viral or got you kind of more engagement? Because a lot of people, even if they aren't doing a total pivot, but they do want to get attention on their Instagram page for, I mean, at least in orthodontics, it's to attract more patients. So for whatever reason, they might be active on social media. What are some tips you can give people, or just not because you purposely were trying to, gain followers, but that worked for you, that you were kind of like, oh, good to know.
Yeah, I think I had one post that go went like pretty viral, and it was really surprising to me because it was just me sharing like different companies that were non-clinical. And I think really what it did, a lot of people saved it and a lot of people wanted to refer back to that. And so the goal is always to get engagement, right? So you either want likes, comments, shares, all of that leads to follows and engagement. And so I think making sure you're having like a call to action at the end of each post that's saying like, okay, like this or share this, or posting things that do kind of resonate with people so that they want to share it, they want to kind of refer back to you, because that's going to be something that boosts the engagement and then boosts the followers. I use also a software called ManyChat, which is like that thing that you probably see, like comment whatever, and I'll send you the link, because that also increases engagement. And so that was something that I learned as well to do. That's like a little bit of a delicate balance. You can't do that on every post because it's like kind of annoying.
What strategies have you been using to build your brand and promote it? What, beside the software tool that you were referring to, are there other things that you've been doing? How have you grown it to 30,000 followers? That's amazing.
Yeah, I think really it's just about being consistent, like really just like showing up. I wouldn't say every day, but showing up frequently and like continuing to refine my message. I haven't used any other software aside from that ManyChat. Like I have a store or like a website that I use, but other than that, I haven't used any like advertising or any marketing spend other than that software, which is cheap, like $10 a month or something like that. So yeah, I really think it's just about like being authentic, kind of figuring out your pillars of like what are the maybe 3 or 4 things that you want to kind of talk about, like those paths, and then consistently kind of talking about that so that your audience knows who you are. So for me, my audience knows like, okay, if I am a clinician and I want to pivot to a non-clinical role, I'm going to Hannah. And so I think kind of owning that brand of like being that go-to person that is going to be able to answer questions or share or kind of speak what they're looking for. And so I also think one thing that has helped me grow is that there's not a lot of competitors in this space. There's not a lot of other people who are talking about it, especially in the ways that I do, that aren't like businesses always trying to like sell you to take their course. I do some of that, like candidly, that's how I make money on it, but so I think there wasn't a lot of people showing up in talking about it in like the authentic, real kind of way.
Now, what I like to ask people, Hannah, is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew at an earlier point in your career trajectory? Is there a lesson learned that you can share?
Yeah, I think when I was 23 years old, I thought, I'm going to finish grad school, I'm going to work as a clinician, and that's what it's going to be like. And I think now, nearly 10 years later, it's like the beauty is that you don't know. You don't know until you try. You don't know what opportunities are going to exist unless you put yourself out there. And I think I would tell that version of myself, like, it's okay to put yourself out there. It's okay to take a path that maybe doesn't look the same as everyone. That can lead to something that's way more fulfilling than sticking with what you feel like you should do based on like societal pressure or familial pressure or whatever it is.
I think that's a great answer. I think especially when you're young, like it's crazy to me that we decide what we want to do for the rest of our lives when we're so young. Like we're babies. We don't even know what's going on. So we always like to end with a kind of funny, relatable story that happened in your career journey.
There was this one time when I was working with a patient and they were still coming off sedation and they were just like really convinced that we were their sister and their brother or something, and they were just kind of going on and like asking us about childhood, and we were trying to get them up out of bed to stand, and we kind of eventually just like went along with it because we're like, we need him, like that was the only way he was being compliant with what we were doing. And yeah, so lots of stories like that, especially in the hospital system, that you see all the time.
I'm sure. And then where can people find you, all the things, and work with you?
Yeah. So if you go on my Instagram, the handle is at practitioner_pivot, then you'll find all of my resources. The link to my website is in there. You'll find everything on that page. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me just by my name, Hannah Pugh. I talk about some things about non-clinical, but also share a lot of like industry things on there as well. But those are the two best places to find me.
Awesome. You've been great. This was so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
terrific guest, Hannah. Thank you.
I'm
Your story
inspired.
is
I'm like,
interesting.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, what else can I be doing?
Thank you so much for having me on here. It was great meeting you guys and
Yeah.
talking about it.
And maybe I'll be working with you in the future for some consulting.
I'm here. You know where to find me.
Yes, I do. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Medical Morons. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review.